this envelope's come through my door. Now, I had the notice on the door, notice of trespass and all this sort of stuff, yeah? So, and you know, with these enforcement agents, when they turn up to your house and they see that on your door, they know, oh, we've got a free man on the land here, yeah? No, I'm not a free man on the land, I'm just exercising my rights. But anyway, this letter came through the door, didn't even knock it. So then I went out to him and he was in his car on his tablet up the road, obviously getting his next victim ready to go and visit. So I banged on his window and he's looked and I said, "Do you just put this through 43?" He went, "Yeah." I said, "Come on then, let's have a chat." So he gets out of his car and we walks down. So I gets my paperwork out and I showed him the council tax handbook where it states all liability orders um, were erased in 2003, blah, 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 from the council tax handbook. And then I showed him the transcript. And I said, "So you've saying you've got a court order for council tax, a liability order. All you've got there is a notice from the actual council. They can't act as a judiciary." And I had this conversation for about 10 minutes. And he said, "Well, actually, I haven't got the liability order with me." I said, "Well, how can you come to my door without the liability order then? Because when you come to the door, you've got to give your identification," which he did, your identification. I says, "And you have to show me the authority which you're carrying out your duty." And he turned around and he said, "Well, I haven't got it on me anyway." He said, "But I'll take note." And do you know, Chris, they never ever came back to my house. That was it. They never ever came back. And that was with Newlands. So the next letter that came through the door was Equita, a total different enforcement agency.
Hmm.
So they've obviously just passed it back to the council and they give it to somebody else. But in the meantime, I'm into the next year. So I'd met, do you know, I'll call him Robin Hood. Do you know Robin Hood?
Yeah, not personally, but yeah.
Yeah. So I met Robin Hood personally in Derby face to face, and the guy's information was off the charts for me. Um, so anyway, I found out lots of stuff through him, and I kept in touch with him and this, that, and the other. And everything that he did for me, right, was just pass on the information that he found out, and he never charged me nothing. Now
Mm.
I bunged him some money as a donation just for a thanks for what he was doing.
An
Right? He didn't never even,
appreciation.
yeah, he never asked me for nothing, right?
Mm.
So he knew my court case was coming up. So I went down to the court a few days before and I spoke to the security guard because I've been in there quite a few times now. I got on well with the security guard, so I had a chat with him and I asked him who the judge was. So he told me who the judge's name was because I wanted to ask the judge's name. Now, if he never gave me his full name, then I was going to present case law and a direction from the MOJ, which states they have to give the name on request. But Terry had done all this paperwork. He just said, "Just follow that protocol, and I bet you any money he runs out the court." So I said, "Do you think?" He went, "Yeah." So okay, so I put all that paperwork in anyway. So the judge he knew what I was going to say, and this was all based on the legal fiction. And I've seen it about 10 years, or I've seen a video which was probably about 10, 15 years ago when someone else had done it. I'm sure there's other people that have done it, just hasn't been documented, right?
Mm.
So I went in there, separating myself from the birth certificate. So when I walked in, the judge turned around to me and he says, "Mr. Michael Butler?" I says, "No, that's not me." I said, "But the Capitis Maximus is here." And he says, "Oh, okay, we'll take a note of that." And I pulled out the birth certificate, lifted up in the air. I basically said, "Michael Butler's here. Mr. Michael Butler's here." And then I put it on the desk next to me. And he says, "Right, we're going to start proceedings with, again, Mr. Ryder." And I went, "No, no, no, no." I says, "Can I just get your full name before we start?" And he gave me his full name. And then I asked him, I says, "Are you on your oath today?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm on my oath given to me by Queen Elizabeth." Now, she died a few months before. And I know the oaths carry on
Mm.
to the king. So I know that. Didn't at the time. Um, and I says, "Well," I says, "I've got a problem with that because the oath to deal with me is a Promissory Oath Act, 18, I think 64, Section 4." And all he did was he folded up his laptop and went back to his chambers and he didn't come back. So then the security come back to
Abandoned
me,
ship.
hey?
Abandoned ship.
Yeah. Well, I shouted that a few times. Then I shouted, it took me back to be fair. And then I started shouting the Duns numbers of the courts and all that, acting in criminality. This is a commercial case, blah, blah, blah. And then the security asked me to leave. It was all done peacefully. And then I left. And then I got a a notice of liability about 3 months later, where the times before it was within a week.
Mm.
This was 3 months on. Maybe they were scratching their head about what to do with it or how to play it or whatever. But it still came through. So my point there really is, you can do it yourself. You don't need to pay people hundreds and hundreds of pounds to try and help you. Now, I'm not discouraging anybody not to pay the council tax, but what I will say, you've got to know your circumstances. Like you just said there, you've got a couple of young kids. You don't want people coming knocking your door, right?
And also, it makes a much bigger difference if you're a homeowner versus somebody that rents.
Exactly. They don't say, oh, when you go over 5 grand, they can push for bankruptcy. But what I did, Chris, right, which I'm surprised about, what I did was, and this was with a lady called Tarina, another person who wasn't charging for consultations. Yeah. It was free consultations initially. And if you wanted the product of the trust, okay, then you paid the money. Now, Gavin from Sovereign Empowerment tried to put me onto his mate who was doing trusts. And I thought, yeah, that's the way forward. I don't own it, but I control it all, right? Like
Own
all the
nothing, be
elite.
happy.
Yeah, exactly. It's what all the elites do, right?
Hmm.
So anyway, Gavin was trying to put me onto his mate, and it was 3 grand. And I thought, wow, 3 grand, it's probably worth it. So anyway, I said, give me a little time to think about it. He says, and I'll call you back. So after this hour consultation with Gavin's mate, which that cost me it was actually more than 50. I can't remember what it was, but it was more than Gavin. So then somebody on another social media platform says, oh, I know somebody who's doing trust. Her name's Tarina. So I got in touch with her. And she says, I'll set you up for a free consultation. And if you want to go ahead with the product, it's going to cost you, I think it was about 1,100 quid in total, right? But what was more intriguing with that one was the fact that she does a course. So she teaches you how to implement your trust and how to manage the trust. So it's not a case of, well, there's your paperwork, get on with it, you're done.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? It's a constant support there.
It's an education.
Yeah, exactly. So it was I think it was 700 pounds to do the trust itself, and then the rest of it was to have her time for I think 10 weeks or so, and then continuous after that. So that's what I did. That's what I went for, right? Now, because I had equity on my mortgage, she did the RX1 form for me, put it into Land Registry and all that sort of stuff. And then I think it took about 4 or 5 months. I believe it's taking longer now because more people are doing it, but it took about 4 or 5 months, and then it's there in writing that nobody can put a charge on my property without the permission of me and my other
Mm.
party at the time. Yeah. And it's there in black and white. Now, it was never challenged. I went over £5,000, but there was no ever charge went on my property. And I've heard people getting charges put on the property with the water boards. Yeah. I
Hmm.
don't know whether you've heard that.
Yeah, my sponsor, my good friend Charles Fernandez, who's done like the dormant limited company, he's got done that. So every time anyone wants to put a charge on his property, Land Registry phone up and say, "Yeah, such and such is trying to put a thing on your property. Are you happy to accept?" No, thank you. Okay then, done.
What do they expect?
Done.
Yeah, stick it on.
And that's it. Done.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had the charge put on. So it never ever affected me. I mean, I haven't got my house now. It's been sold. I sold it. But it didn't affect me. Same with the water board. I never paid the water until I sold my property. I haven't paid my water for 5 years, and they never ever put a charge on.